It was a time when kings ruled not only with their swords, but with the faith of their people. The city of Thebes was one such kingdom, a proud city surrounded by mountains and touched by the blessings of the gods. But one day, the blessings turned into a curse. A strange and deadly plague spread across the land. People were dying in the streets, cattle were falling lifeless in the fields, and the air itself seemed filled with sorrow. The cries of mothers, the silence of children, and the prayers of priests mixed together in one desperate sound that reached the palace gates. Their king, Oedipus, was not a man who ignored his people. He had once saved them before, long ago, when the city was haunted by the monstrous Sphinx. He had answered her riddle when no one else could, and through his wisdom and courage, Thebes had been freed. For that act, he was crowned king and married the widowed queen Jocasta. The people saw him as a hero, almost like a god. And so, when the plague returned, they again turned to him. Oedipus stood before the temple, his face filled with concern. The priests begged him to save them, to find the reason for this punishment. He raised his hand and promised his people that he would not rest until Thebes was purified. He sent his brother-in-law, Creon, to the oracle of Delphi, the sacred voice of Apollo, to ask what must be done to save the city. Days passed, and when Creon returned, the news was heavy with mystery. The oracle had spoken. The plague would not end until the murderer of the former king, Laius, was found and driven out from the land. Oedipus was shocked. Laius had been killed years ago before Oedipus came to Thebes. Who could his murderer be? Why had no one found him? The city had long forgotten that unsolved crime, but now it had returned to haunt them all. Oedipus swore to find the killer and cursed him in the strongest words possible. He called upon all the people of Thebes to come forward if they knew anything. He warned that whoever hid the murderer would be cursed, and whoever helped reveal the truth would be blessed. His voice was full of power, but his heart was unaware of the trap fate had already set for him. An old, blind prophet named Tiresias was brought to the palace. Oedipus trusted that this man could see the truth that others could not. But when Tiresias arrived, he refused to speak. His face was full of sorrow. Oedipus demanded answers, and his anger grew with every passing moment. Tiresias finally broke his silence. He said that Oedipus himself was the very man he was looking for, the murderer of Laius. The words fell like thunder. Oedipus was furious. How could this blind old man accuse him, the savior of Thebes, of such a crime? He accused Tiresias of plotting with Creon to take the throne. The argument grew intense, filled with pride and disbelief. Tiresias warned him that though he could see with his eyes, he was blind to the truth within his own life. He told Oedipus that one day he would understand what blindness really meant. With those words, the prophet left, leaving Oedipus shaken but still defiant. When Creon returned, Oedipus accused him of treachery. The two men argued bitterly until Jocasta entered to calm them. She reminded Oedipus that oracles and prophecies were not always true. She herself gave an example. She told him that long ago, a prophecy had said her husband Laius would be killed by his own son. But that prophecy never came true, she said, because Laius's baby had been left to die on a mountain with his feet tied together. Laius, she said, was instead killed by strangers at a crossroads. Her words struck Oedipus deeply. Something about the story felt hauntingly familiar. He asked her for more details. What did Laius look like? How many men were with him? And where exactly did it happen? Jocasta replied that Laius had been killed at a place where 3 roads met, by a stranger who matched Oedipus's age and build. Slowly, Oedipus's heart began to tremble. He then told his own story. Before he came to Thebes, he had lived in Corinth, the son of King Polybus and Queen Merope, or so he had always believed. But one day, someone at a banquet had called him a bastard, hinting that he was not the true son of the king. Troubled, he went to the oracle of Delphi to find the truth. The oracle did not answer his question, but it gave him a terrible prophecy, that he would kill his father and marry his mother. Shocked and terrified, Oedipus fled Corinth, determined never to return, hoping to escape his fate. On his journey, he met an old man and his servants at a crossroads. A quarrel broke out, and in his anger, Oedipus struck the old man and killed him. That man, he now realized, might have been Laius. The thought made his blood run cold. Still, there was one chance that he might not be guilty. Jocasta told him that only one of Laius's servants had survived the attack and was still living somewhere in the countryside. Oedipus immediately sent for him. Days later, a messenger arrived from Corinth. He brought news that King Polybus had died peacefully in his bed. The people of Corinth wanted Oedipus to return and become their king. Jocasta rejoiced. "See," she said, "the prophecy was false. You did not kill your father after all." But Oedipus was still uneasy. His father might be dead, but his mother was still alive, and the oracle had said he would marry her. He refused to go back to Corinth for fear of fulfilling that part of the prophecy. The messenger then tried to comfort him with strange news. "You have nothing to fear," he said. "Polybus and Merope were not your real parents." The messenger explained that many years ago, he had been a shepherd working in the mountains. He had been given a baby with its ankles pierced and tied together. He felt pity for the child and gave him to the king and queen of Corinth, who raised him as their own. Oedipus demanded to know who had given the baby to the messenger. The man said it was another shepherd, one who had served Laius. Jocasta's face suddenly went pale. She begged Oedipus to stop questioning further, but he refused. She fled into the palace, crying out in despair. Soon after, the old shepherd was brought in. Oedipus questioned him harshly until the man broke down and confessed. The baby had been Laius's son. The queen had ordered him to leave the baby to die because of the prophecy that the child would kill his father. But he had felt pity and given the baby to the messenger instead. That baby was Oedipus himself. The truth hit him like lightning. He had killed his father, married his mother, and brought a curse upon his city. The prophecy he had tried to escape had been fulfilled in every way. Oedipus staggered back in horror, his mind filled with memories of his life, each one turning into a knife of guilt. He rushed into the palace, calling for Jocasta, but it was too late. She had hanged herself in her chamber. Seeing her dead, Oedipus was overcome with unbearable grief. He took the golden pins from her dress and drove them into his own eyes. Blood ran down his face, but he did not scream. His voice was calm, broken, and full of realization. He had been blind all his life to the truth, and now that he could finally see, he could no longer bear to look at the world. When the people of Thebes saw what had happened, they were filled with sorrow. The mighty king who had once solved riddles no one else could had been destroyed by the riddle of his own life. Creon, now the ruler, came forward. Oedipus begged him to exile him from Thebes, to send him to wander far away from the city he had once saved but now cursed. Creon agreed, and the people stood in silence as Oedipus was led out, his empty eyes covered, his voice trembling with pain. He said goodbye to his daughters, Antigone and Ismene, asking them to remember him not as a sinner, but as a man who suffered for what he did not know. The chorus, the voice of the people, ended the tale with a solemn truth. No man should be called happy until he has lived his last day and escaped suffering. Fate, they said, is not something one can outthink or outrun. It waits patiently, guiding every step we take, even when we think we are free. And so, Oedipus, once a hero, became a wanderer, a man who had solved the riddle of the Sphinx but failed to solve the riddle of his own life. His story remains one of the most powerful tragedies ever told, reminding every listener that human pride, however noble, can never stand against the will of destiny. The winds of Thebes would carry his name for generations. Mothers would tell their children about the king who sought the truth and lost everything for it. And somewhere in that eternal echo lies the haunting whisper of a truth older than time, that even the wisest among men are only players in a game written by fate long before their birth. In the end, Oedipus's life became a mirror for all who seek knowledge. It was not the gods who punished him. It was the truth itself that broke him. Yet, in his final blindness, he saw what he could not before, that to be human is to be fragile, and to know oneself is both the greatest gift and the greatest curse. Thebes continued to live. The plague slowly faded, and the city healed. But in every shadow of its walls and every whisper of its wind, the memory of Oedipus remained. A story of a man who loved truth more than comfort, who sought answers even when they destroyed him, and who proved that no one, no matter how powerful, can escape what the stars have already written.